Even though they won, the Jags managed to lock up the #1 overall pick for a second year in a row. And according to Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, they're making a change this week. Back to the Jags, taking Aiden Hutchinson with the #1 overall pick, and not Alabama offensive lineman Evan Neal. He is going to the Jets in Ryan's latest mock draft at 4. However, with the national championship tonight, there are a number of players we will be watching who could go in the first round. Keep an eye on Georgia's front 7. Let's welcome back Brady Quinn, longtime GM Scott Pioli, also our draft expert Ryan Wilson. We're going to take a look at some of the draft prospects playing in the national championship tonight. And let's start with the guy who does have a chance to go #1 overall. Scott, tell us about Evan Neal. As of right now, I mentioned Ryan has him going not 1, but 4 to the Jets.
Amanda, again, we're all anticipating that he's going to enter the draft. A lot of these players we're going to talk about now haven't actually declared for the draft, but if and when Evan Neal does, he will probably be the top tackle. He's an absolutely massive physical specimen with unbelievable physical skills. You don't usually see a big man that can do the things athletically that he can do. And it's not just his athleticism when he has to make moves, it's his reactive athleticism that is really rare for such a big man. We've seen this viral video of him doing the box jump, which is just off the charts. But again, Evan Neal is the top talent, top prospect as an offensive lineman this year. I will say this, though. I was actually expecting a little bit more out of Evan this year than what he gave us. Last year, you saw him ascending and you were thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, this guy is going to be the real deal. And he is the real deal, but just feeling and thinking that we could have seen more out of him this year. He's had a slow start to the season, but again, a super talent that is going to be a tremendous pro when he gets there.
Scott, it's interesting you said that about Evan Neal, because I've talked to teams that have had those similar reactions, and I actually have Evan Neal as my #2 offensive tackle behind Ike Ekwonu out of NC State. They're close. You can swap one for the other and be fine with it, but I think you're exactly right. Given all the expectations coming into this season, given how well he had played in previous years at Alabama, the expectation was that he was going to absolutely dominate. And here's where so he's left tackle in 21, right tackle in 2020, left guard in 2019. And here's where I set him up in that hierarchy of Alabama offensive tackles. I think he's in between Jedrick Wells, who went to the Browns and played really well when he's healthy, and above Alex Leatherwood, who was a first-round pick last year for the Raiders, to some consternation to some folks that didn't think he deserved to go that high. We'll figure out altogether whether that was a good pick or not, but I think he fits right in between those two players. I think the upside is through the roof, and just as a side note, I tried that box jump that Evan Neal did at about 2 feet. I tore both my ACL, so I'm out for 6 to 9 months.
I got my ACL and my groin, actually.
Out from what, Ryan? What were you doing before that you were in for?
Wait, what'd you say, Brady?
I said, out from what? What were you doing before that you were in for? What are you out from?
The dog is now walking itself, Brady. That's what I'm out from. That's it, though.
Very nice, very nice. All right, so the Jets have 2 top 10 picks. Ryan has them going with a guy from Alabama first, a Georgia Bulldog second. Scott, what is the draft outlook for Georgia linebacker Nakobi Dean?
Again, if Nakobi Dean comes out, this is a player that ascended dramatically this year. This guy has all the tools, all the skills. I talked about Evan Neal's reactionary athleticism. On the other side of the ball, Nakobi Dean's his ability to reactively move and make plays is incredible. This year, he did a great job in improving. Looking at him last year, he really didn't do that much to jump off the screen. This year, when put in a position, he jumped off. He ascended rapidly this year. He improved. The other thing that he has in terms of being an impact player is if you put him on your team, you will not only have him on defense for first, second, and third down, he will be a 4-down player and be able to play on special teams. So that creates tremendous value. To watch him improve over the course of this season was really remarkable, because I watched and did a preseason report on him. I was watching him on tape from last year. I said, this is a good college football player. A little bit undersized, not crazy about the size. But this year, he jumped off the screen when you watch the tape.
You know, he reminds me of a lot of Roquan Smith. It's probably an easy comp, too, because he's a former Georgia Bulldog, but he's that type of player, I think, with the tape that Scott referenced that he's put out this year. I mean, he's a plug-and-play linebacker. You're going to keep him on the field the entire game. And the thing that stands out the most to me is the fact that he stood out on a star-studded defense for Georgia, which can be hard to do because they have so many guys who are going to get drafted, who are going to play at the next level. Maybe not necessarily all first-round picks, but this is one for me that I think you'd be hard-pressed to pass up on in the first round. It'd be shocking to me if he didn't go. Obviously, Ryan has him going in the top 10, and I'm sure the New York Jets would love him and love to be able to get not only a tackle to protect Zach Wilson, but a linebacker to be able to stop him so he doesn't always have to win shootouts like we've seen from the Jets this past season. So for me, Nakobi Dean's the best inside linebacker in this draft class, and he's showcased himself extremely well. I think he's also in for a big game tonight. I don't know how much Alabama's going to try to run the football, but I do think based on how much they gave Brian Robinson the football and what that game may look like, we're going to hear a lot of Nakobi Dean's name tonight.
There's a lot of hype around this next guy. Ohio State transfer turned Alabama star wide receiver Jameson Williams. Right now, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was trying to go through it. I have to use the little search function. I think he's your second wide receiver off the board, going to the Saints at 18. What else do we need to know?
That's right, Amanda. Good job with the Control F there. You found it number 2 behind
really good with technology.
Wilson, his former teammate at Ohio State. There you go. So he had to leave Ohio State to go to the best program in the country to get some looks, which is sort of funny to think about, but that's how good those Ohio State receivers have been. So he's second off the board, going number 18 to the Saints, Jameson Williams, and he has been absolutely electric this year. He had 9 catches as a career high last year for Ohio State. This year he had 75 receptions. He's had 7 games of catching of at least 160 receiving yards. The last time he faced off against Georgia, he went for 123, I believe. So he is absolutely blown. No, he went higher for that. He's absolutely blown up. He's explosive off the line of scrimmage. He's not particularly big, but he breaks tackles. He plays much stronger than he may appear. In some sense, he reminds you a little bit of Devontae Smith. Not quite that dynamic, but he's faster than Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner. So I think, it's sort of funny to say, hey, I'm going to transfer to Alabama to get a chance for some playing time. He not only did that, he took advantage of it, and he's going to parlay that into being one of the first wide receivers off the board.
There's a number of things I love about Jameson Williams' game, but the biggest thing is how much better he's gotten just overall as a player. Obviously, he's gotten more of an opportunity, but the thing that he possesses that, to me, no one else really does have the same type of gear is just his speed. That's going to show up in the 40, but it shows up on tape. Everyone in the NFL is looking for separation. Jameson Williams is the type of player who can do that. And I think the one thing, too, that you noticed within Bill O'Brien's system, which former NFL head coach, an NFL-style system, they moved him around. They're constantly looking for matchups. You're going to see that a lot in the national championship game. We've already seen that in the semifinal as well as the SEC championship game, trying to put him in different positions to get the football. So he's going to be used to that. He's going to be ready to go in right away and play a bunch of different positions, more in an NFL-style system, and make an immediate impact. So I think he'll end up being the first wide receiver taken in this draft class because of that dynamic speed. Everyone's looking for it, and he's got it in this draft class.
Bill O'Brien has said he thinks compared to where other guys are, compared to where he is, that he is definitely the most NFL ready. All right, this next guy, Ryan, in his mock draft there says he's a first-round pick all day long. Georgia cornerback Darren Kendrick. Ryan has him going 26th overall to the Bills right now. Now, Scott, I'm really curious to talk to you about this. This is a kid who was dismissed by Clemson. He had a lot of off-the-field issues. From a front office perspective, how do you evaluate him?
Well, I think that what you just brought up is really important. When you look at this player just in terms of his tools, again, he started off at Clemson as a wide receiver, had spent a season as a wide receiver, played in all 15 games. The next 2 years, he played corner. During that time at Clemson, he had some issues that caused him to be suspended for games and miss time. He gets dismissed from Clemson last February. While he's sitting waiting in the transfer portal, he gets arrested. He's had a history of issues, yet you've got this supreme talent. Amanda, this is a great question because I think each team looks at things differently. You look at the risk and the reward. You look at your locker room. How can you first of all have to look into what these issues are, what they really are, dig down deep, and then find out if it's immaturity, find out if it's a real problem, and then how is he going to fit in your locker room, and then how much are you willing to pay in currency, meaning not just cash, but as a draft pick in order to put him in your locker room? Because there are real issues here. We just need to dig down and figure out what they are. But again, every team has a different scale of balance and how much they're willing to risk and when they're going to take a player with a history like Kendrick.
And that's going to be one of obviously the biggest questions. The beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And it's going to take a team that feels comfortable with taking that risk. But what you see on tape, you have to love. From what he was doing at Clemson and what he's doing now at Georgia, you have to feel pretty confident in him being a shutdown corner at the next level. He's got the size. He's got the measurables you're looking for. He's got the recovery speed. You heard Scott mention he was a former wide receiver. You see that on tape, too, with his ball skills. I think the thing that stands out to me, too, is he's adapted to scheme over the course from going to Clemson to Georgia. That's another key, and he's a willing tackler. Sometimes you get some of these cornerbacks who, hey, I just want to eliminate a guy in the passing game. I don't want to have to go in there and stick my nose in the run game. He's not afraid of doing that. He'll come up and stick you, and that's another piece of his game that I think makes him more NFL ready. But, Scott mentioned that there obviously are some big concerns, between the medical and then the character issues. Those are the things on the outside we really don't hear. And if he does drop in the draft, it's got to be due to that. It's not going to be due to the tape.
This next guy, you got to love people that just stick it out. He could have gone somewhere else. This is a fifth-year senior, Brian Robinson Jr., Alabama running back. He didn't start, guys, until this year. He was highly coveted out of high school, had a lot of patience, cracked a rib this season, took only 1 week off. Scott, what is he looking like as a prospect now?
This is one of my favorite players in the draft, not because he's one of the top players in the draft, but he's just a top player, if that makes sense. So I spent some time, obviously I work and do some consulting work for not only the University of Alabama, but the University of Georgia. And this is a guy that I have watched the last couple of years. He's known internally as the mayor of Tuscaloosa. He is a Tuscaloosa native. And to watch his patience, to watch him compete, but also know his place behind the other running backs that have been there, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs. He waited his turn, and when it was his opportunity, he has shined brilliantly, in my opinion. And I also want to talk about this. What he does in the passing game, what he does as a blitz pickup guy, what he has done in the past as a special teams player is an important thing when you're a young running back. This, again, is one of my favorite players in the draft, and I remember spending time with him near the end of the season. No one was talking about Brian Robinson. You look at everyone's top 10 running backs in the draft, very few had him there until the end of the season. And I remember saying to Brian, you know what, Brian, just hang tight, because when you get on this stage for the national playoffs, or for the national championship playoffs, everyone is going to see you in the entire country, these 2 games, and people are going to see who you are and what you are as a player. In terms of a makeup guy, this is the kind of guy that, again, spending time with him, I want my locker room being a leader.
God, that's a fantastic point. We just got finished talking about Darren Kendrick and the potential off-field issues that come with drafting someone like that. And then you talk about Brian Robinson. And what you have to understand, if you're thinking about Brian Robinson from his perspective, is he's highly recruited coming out of high school. He's going to one of the best programs in the country. And then he finds out he is no longer the best player on the field. He's not even the 4th or 5th best player in his position. He has to sit there for 3.5, 4 years. He finally gets some touches. And instead of being moody and being upset, which is something that, 19, 20, 21-year-old Ryan Wilson would have done, he kept his nose clean, kept his head down, did the right thing, and then here we go. Najee Harris, who came back as well, parlayed that into being a first-round pick. He takes over for him, and he's having a fantastic season. He absolutely was integral to what they did against Cincinnati in that game, rushed for over 200 yards. You mentioned the blitz pickup. He caught 32 passes this year. He never caught more than a handful of passes coming into the season. And you mentioned the ability to do everything as a great teammate in the locker room, and that doesn't go overlooked by NFL teams. Certainly it does in the draft conversation in the media, because those things aren't necessarily fun to talk about or interesting to talk about. But NFL teams, those are at the top of the to-do list, and I think that's a great feather in the cap of Brian Robinson to be able to do what he has done at such a young age. And he will be playing in the NFL next year, and he will be an integral part to whatever locker room he ends up in.
Love that story for him. Last guy, let's go to the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia defensive lineman Trayvon Walker. They say he's actually one of the quietest guys on the team. His dad, much like you, Brady, was a former Marine, also a former police officer. Scott, what else do we need to know about Trayvon Walker?
Well, that he's one of the best players in college football this year. Because Brady mentioned this earlier, there's so many good players on this Georgia defense, you don't know which one to point at and which one to think of. But to me, the key with Trayvon Walker is I've watched him this year. He has lined up at every position from the 0 shade on the inside all the way out to 7 technique. His position versatility and his athletic skills are going to be so important to a defense that wants to move a player around. and he can play multiple positions in multiple defenses. And to watch him improve and his tools and to see the ascension that he's had this year, you look at this tape and you see his length. We haven't gotten measurements on players yet, but you want to talk about length. I've seen him in person, spent time around him. His length and his ability to get separations with blockers is pretty remarkable. The other thing he has with those hands and that length is extremely violent hands and extremely strong and explosive hands. And to me, as a defensive lineman that's going to be used in different spaces and used in a 2-point stance and a 3-point stance, Trayvon Walker, I think, is going to be a good NFL player.
Upside, upside, upside. You're going to hear that when people talk about Trayvon Walker all leading up to the draft because of what Scott just mentioned, the measurables, the length, the explosiveness, the versatility. I mean, he's exactly what NFL defenses are looking for, a guy that can play multiple positions across the front, but in particular impact the quarterback. And whether he gets there or not off the edge, he's got that length to put his arms up, bat down passes, and then be able to impact the pass or affect the rush. So, look, I think the world of this young man. I think he's going to have a great opportunity at the next level, but his best football is ahead of him, and that's always something that NFL evaluators want to see and want to hear, because he might be one of those guys that's a diamond in the rough where if he doesn't go in the first round, doesn't sneak in, he'd be a steal in the second round.
Brady Quinn, we appreciate it. Scott, we appreciate all of your insight. Ryan, no more box jumps, okay? Stop tearing your ACLs. Good luck with that next mock draft. Guys, thank you guys so much for everything NFL, because it's been a wild Monday here after Week 18 is done. We are getting ready for a super wild card weekend. Make sure to download and follow the Pick 6 podcast. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.